Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as the Lost. This Lost Daily was much different than the usual Lost Dailies, and the main reason for that is what I feel is that most of the time you either get a really powerful run out of the start, or maybe you find a respawn item, or maybe you use the D4 enough times that you get that respawn item. You respawn as a character that can actually have health, and once you have that, then it's much easier to deal with Boss Rush and Hush, and in this particular case also Mega Satan. But once you're stuck in a position where you really don't get any damage upgrades or any tears upgrades, and you're still left as the Lost and you can only take 2 hits, that becomes much more difficult to pull off. So in order to do it, either you need to play really well, you need to use the bombs in order to actually make it through some of the hard rooms at the start, you need to look up the information obviously so you know where the good items are, or maybe you just need a miracle in some sense, I feel, because there's so many things that can go wrong, and it's so easy to get hit twice, especially on this particular version of Boss Rush. I believe there was a champion Boss Rush in this case. I didn't make it there, but I did read the Reddit thread. So imagine beating the champion Boss Rush with basically base damage and having to fight and just survive through both of those, and it's very hard, and I would say in some cases almost impossible. I feel like if you don't get one of the particular items which make it a bit easier, or maybe they just give you a bit of a damage boost, something's gonna get you. You just lose concentration. Having to fight them for like 10 minutes is a bit too much. And even if you do manage to beat them and get through Boss Rush, I feel like you wouldn't have enough time to make it to Harsh, so you would need to make a decision. And in this case, then I think it would be better to go just to Harsh, because he gives you more points, more consumables. You also get an access to another shop, so maybe you can get something out of that. But overall, it was a very difficult daily, and it did require a bit of a different approach than what I usually do with the Lost, like I said before. And in this particular case, I wasn't really much going for the win and just trying to get to the end, but as soon as I realized this is going to be one of those runs which is not going to be too friendly to us, I just kind of changed my mindset. And in this particular case, obviously I'm gonna be using the active items that are in the D4 at this point. I'm still keeping on the D4 because I'm trying to maybe find the floor, especially with Battery Baby. There's gonna be a lot of battery charges lying around, and maybe I can use those to reroll into something better. But I realize that this floor is not gonna come, and maybe, well, it would be possible for me to do so. I just felt like I didn't have enough items in order to warrant that, because at this point I only had 8 items in total, and as soon as I rerolled once with a D4, that would leave me with 8 different items, so I wouldn't even have the Battery Baby to go on the next floor. And what maybe kind of sealed the deal here was the fact that I got Brimstone. And I have to say that this was entirely my decision. Again, I figured I'm not gonna probably to make it to Boss Rush, and even if I do, I just can't guarantee that I'm gonna get any good items on the next floors. So it's in my best interest, or at least that's the way I see it, to explore this floor in full, and that's exactly what I did. And thankfully in this particular case, it did pay out and give me Brimstone, but I still wasn't strong. Brimstone is a really good item, but it's not a really powerful one. It's not gonna carry my run towards the end, especially with base damage. There's just not enough substance there in order to get through these floors fast enough in order to get to Boss Rush. Well, I certainly could make it with bombs and just trying to get there as fast as possible, and especially later on, I think I get the Emperor card. I just felt like it's not the right place or time in order to do that. And I know a lot of people might disagree, getting the Boss Rush is obviously very important, but I felt because this is a hard mode daily, and because there are so many possible outcomes that you can happen just by exploring and getting different items, I felt like it's my duty to really go through those and try to basically maximize the exploration bonus that will have, because I feel like that is the safer option. You can imagine it this way: if I decide to skip some of the rooms, I would lose out on exploration bonus, and I would definitely lose something like 2,000, maybe 3,000 points in total, but those are 3,000 points that are kind of easily accessible. I have the Holy Metal, I have Brimstone, I have the Compost item, and all of these items work well at clearing rooms, but they don't really work that well when I get to Boss Rush and try to beat it. And at this point, I realized that I think I made the right decision, because I still didn't get any DPS upgrade items. Sure, the Compost is a really nice active item that allows me to be much more effective at what I'm doing, but it's still not a run which I would describe as a really powerful one. And for that reason, it's hard, because my gut instinct tells me I need to go faster, I need to make it to those objectives, but at the same time, I know this is a Lost Daily, I know that a lot of people probably won't make it that far. Most people would probably die by the 5th or maybe the 6th floor, so it's very important for me to play very methodically and very carefully, so just so I can avoid dying. Essentially, if I just get to the end, I feel like that's gonna be enough to put me at least the top 100, but if I play maybe a bit better, maybe if I take my time to break the game, and I could have done that because I've also found the jar. So if I just took that particular floor and I didn't have Dark Bomb, I would be able to actually get something like even an extra 6,000 points. It would take me probably like 20 minutes to do it, but the possibility was there, and in the end I could even finish with something like 50,000 points in total without making it to any boss rush or hush at all. And that's obviously a very great position to be in, because now I'm suddenly competing with people who did make it to boss rush and hush but had to skip out cell rooms, or maybe they couldn't take the time in order to break as much as I could. And this is what I'm saying, you really have to make judgment at which point is it a good idea to make it to boss rush, try to start bombing rooms so you can actually get much faster, and at which point can you actually take your time and realize that maybe the exploration bonus is gonna bring you more benefits and maybe it's gonna be easier to achieve. And in this particular case, I feel like the main reason for me swaying into that way is just because this was a hard mode daily, and on hard mode dailies there tend to be more rooms to explore in total, and of course with that I feel like more exploration bonus, and I felt like I was more justified in my decision. Before I go on, first of all, if you hear any thunder and lightning outside, that's just because of the weather. I'm not doing anything, but I really can't turn the weather off, so if it's very distracting, I'm sorry. I think that the lightning struck twice in the time of as I'm speaking this video, so it shouldn't be too bad. But still, if something does sound off, it's not your place, it's just mine. Okay, so at this point, I was the things were looking a bit up because I got Incubus, so that's obviously quite great. But the real MVP of this run was Compost, and the decision for me to take it was a very peculiar one, because obviously I had a lot of active items I could have decided to stick with, like the jar, for example, that would have allowed me to break, or maybe I could take the game kit, and that's great as the loss, because now you suddenly have a second chance at beating the enemies, because you can use them. You can use it to get some invisibility and then maybe deal with them later. And there also was the jumper cables, which is one of the new items in the update, and I believe that gives you a charge for every 15 rooms, and also have the 9 volt. So basically we had all of the components of having a strong active item daily, and in this particular case, of course, I didn't know I was gonna get those, but I just felt like maybe it's a bit more important for me to stick with the D4, because it's gonna give me more potential than I just said it, the game kit. Even though it does have some uses on the loss, I just felt like still not that good of an item, and especially against bosses, it's maybe good to get away out of a single hit of damage, but in that case, isn't it better to just have something like the Dull Razor, or maybe, I'm not sure, obviously it's better for rooms, but the fact that it's a 6-room charge just kinda put me off of it, and I decided to stick with the D4. Of course, later on, I did find Compost, but at that point, I just figured I got Brimstone, my run was strong enough, I should just take Compost, because it's a really powerful item. Not a lot of people give it credit for what it is, but I felt like it was going to be the right call in this particular case, and it did turn out to be one of those lucky decisions which I feel like I made. And obviously with the 9 volt, now suddenly it's a 1-room charge, and with also the bigger flies and the bigger spiders, they're also dealing an insane amount of damage. As soon as I enter a room with a boss or just regular enemies, the flies and the spiders take care of them basically instantly. And what's great about Compost, especially on a 1-room charge, so keep in mind this is like Guppy's head level of strong, is that it not only does it transform every consumable on the ground into flies or spiders, but it also duplicates the ones that you already have on you, and it being a 1-room charge, especially with more powerful spiders and spiders and flies, that's what I meant to say, and them killing the enemies in the room, you can just use it immediately and you get basically all of them back, and it's a really crazy combo. And again, I know a lot of people don't really give it a lot of credit, but I feel like even if I didn't have the 9 volt, and even if I didn't have the better improved flies and spiders, this item would still be top notch in this particular case, because again, I was more going for the exploration bonus, so I knew that I was going to be visiting a lot of rooms, and because of that I feel like this item choice was much more applicable for me in order to do something. But obviously, if I knew that I'll have this combo when I went to boss rush, it would be great for boss rush too, because I would get 2 charges instantly and I would be able to kind of recuperate all of my flies and spiders as soon as they actually disappeared and killed the enemies. But also because the right, because it's a hard mode daily. I wanted to say that the bosses drop hearts when you beat them, and that's true in most cases, at least when it's an easy mode daily, but because it's a hard mode daily, you actually don't get the hearts that you would usually drop. I just thought that you could maybe convert those into flies or spiders, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually not that good of an idea. But still, you could duplicate the spiders and the flies that you already have, and especially if we get something like a mystery sack, and maybe that drops some red hearts on the ground. Now, obviously, because you're the lost, you can't really use it. It's a good idea to transform those into just some offensive potential. And you can see that I'm pretty much relying on my spiders and flies here to do all of the damage. At least, thankfully, at this point, I got 2 damage upgrades in the version of the side, the Death's Touch, and also in the version of Big Steven. And being at 7 damage is actually much more comfortable with Brimstone than 3.5, because I feel like I'm at least one-shotting most basic enemies now, and that's probably what you want to be gunning for, especially when you have an item like this. But in most cases, it does turn out to be still maybe a bit on the weak side, so having an extra source of damage in the version of flies and spiders is really good, especially because they're homing and you can pretty much deal with enemies instantly. There are some bad situations or maybe some bad rooms which that can really bite you in the ass, because they don't really follow you, or at least they don't attack when you attack, but they attack as soon as they spot an enemy, or at least are in close proximity to them. So if there's a room layout where maybe there's an explosive fly next to the door, the spiders will kill it instantly, you'll take that hit of damage, which is a bit unfortunate, but that's just how Isaac is sometimes. Maybe as my final note here, I would like just to note on the difficulty of this daily. There were quite a few of very heinous rooms. Me having spiders and the flies obviously kind of made that a bit easier, but overall it was still a daily where I feel like there were a lot of bad room layouts which could really lead to me dying very early on, especially on the first floor. There's that room with a lot of spiders, and if you're maybe not that careful, they can easily swarm you, and it's hard to forget in some situations that you can fly and go over rocks and shoot over rocks, especially when you're playing as the Lost, when you have 3 giant spiders kind of chasing you down, and you maybe walk into a fire, maybe you walk into an enemy, and then you just really can't react, and that just gets you very fast. So in this particular case, I feel like this was the right decision to go to the void, go to the easier floors, explore the rooms, use the compost to actually deal with those rooms as efficiently as possible, and in the end I did end up with quite a nice score actually, 43,000 points without boss rush or harsh. Obviously my damage penalty is 0 because I didn't get hit not even once, and if I did I would end up dying. I had the holy mantle obviously, and my item penalty also wasn't that too terribly high, so it was a very nice relaxed run. You can see that if I actually played the jar and used the Shrek bonus, I could have easily gotten 7,000 points at least, if you maybe deduct that time penalty, and that would need me at a total of 50,000 points, and suddenly I'm competing with the people who actually did make it to boss rush and harsh, and this is great. It's something that I feel like a lot more people should realize. Sometimes just finishing the daily is gonna be enough for you to rank well, and if you're just trying to rank well, that's maybe a good idea to keep in mind sometimes, because sometimes, not all the time, you're gonna find a strong combo or maybe strong item which is just gonna carry your run. You really need to know your limits and when you can afford to do that and not, and I feel like this is the daily that was the perfect example to showcase that, and I hope that maybe you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.